There is a very familiar moment, a silent transformation that many men only recognize when it is far too late. You begin a relationship as a confident man with clear boundaries and a distinct personality that she is attracted to. But then, bit by bit, those lines begin to blur. You find yourself explaining more for your obvious actions. You start weighing your words before speaking a personal opinion, simply out of fear of making her uncomfortable. You strive to do everything more right, more thoroughly, just to maintain a strained atmosphere of peace in the relationship. And before you realize what is truly happening, the man who once had steel standards and a proud self-esteem has turned into someone who is constantly apologizing, always ready to concede, and perpetually trying to please his partner at any cost. People often call this becoming a doormat. But understand this, you did not fall into this state because you are weak or inferior. In fact, many successful and powerful men in society still get caught in this trap. It is a highly sophisticated psychological trap where your kindness and goodness are weaponized against you. Why do men often ignore the early signs of this trap? The main reason lies in the confusion between empathy and self-abandonment. In modern society, we are often encouraged to be more sensitive, to listen, and to be ready to share emotions. Those things are absolutely correct, but there is a very thin line between being an emotionally mature man and a man who is stripping himself of the right to be respected. When you continuously prioritize someone else's feelings over your core values and personal boundaries, you are no longer a partner. You are becoming a utility. Sensing that you are being sidelined or looked down upon is not pettiness. It is a self-defense signal from your self-esteem, reminding you that your value system is being violated. In the Femina Mind philosophy, we don't look at this issue to blame women or turn them into manipulators. We look at the dynamic. No one becomes a doormat in a single day. It is the result of 1,000 tiny retreats. 1,000 times you told yourself, whatever, I'll just let it go for the sake of peace. The truth is, a relationship without boundaries is like a house without doors. Anyone can walk in and disturb everything. If you feel like you are straining to keep the peace while your self-respect is crumbling, it is time to stop and observe. Have you ever felt like you had to apologize even when you did nothing wrong, just to end a terrifying silence? If the answer is yes, leave a comment below. Admitting you are in the trap is the only step toward escaping it. Next, we will deconstruct the specific behavioral patterns to show you exactly how this trap was set. As you begin to realize you are retreating too much, psychological patterns start operating to solidify your position as a doormat. In this section, we will deconstruct the first two traps: the craving for acceptance and the misuse of explanations. 1. The approval addiction. The first pattern is a silent virus that gnaws away at a man's fortitude, the approval addiction. Observe your own mind. Do you ever feel like you are constantly tuning in to her emotional frequency? You perpetually ask yourself, is she angry? Did what I just say upset her? You begin to fear her disappointment more than you fear betraying yourself. In psychology, your brain is establishing a dangerous link. Approval equals emotional safety. To maintain that sense of safety, you choose to avoid all conflict, agree to every request, and stifle your own personality. The male mistake, thinking that keeping the peace is good for the relationship. But the Femina Mind truth is this: a relationship without conflict is often a relationship without honesty. Respect must sometimes be forged through friction and blunt debate. When you become addicted to her satisfaction, you unintentionally send a message: your emotions are more important than my values. That is precisely when respect begins to evaporate. 2. Overexplaining everything. The second pattern is a habit that seems civilized, but is actually extremely damaging: over-explaining. Have you ever found yourself justifying decisions that are perfectly personal and normal? For example, I'm going to grab coffee with friends, but just for a bit, because I know you don't like me coming home late. When you constantly explain, you are inadvertently placing yourself in a defensive position, the position of a suspect trying to please a judge. Many men believe that using more logic and detailed explanations will create more understanding and respect. The reality is the opposite. The more you explain, the lower the value of your words. In her eyes, this behavior shows that you lack confidence in your own decisions and are begging for permission. According to Femina Mind, decisiveness is what creates attraction and boundaries. A man of character speaks less and acts more clearly. You do not need to justify having your own interests or your own space, as those are the fundamental rights of an independent individual. This pattern is subtle. It makes you feel like a reasonable person, but in reality, it is turning you into a compliant one. Observe yourself. In the past week, how many times have you explained something that you really only needed to announce? If you feel these analyses are hitting home on habits you previously thought were good, hit like. It is the confirmation that you have begun to wake up and escape the approval addiction trap. Right now, you might not feel weak, just worn down. Not because anyone openly disrespected you, but because somewhere along the way, your role in the dynamic started to feel heavier. You give more patience, more understanding, more adjustment, and yet the balance never quite seems to return. That feeling can be difficult to name, because on the surface, none of these moments look harmful. Being supportive sounds healthy. Being flexible sounds mature. Each small compromise feels like the reasonable choice in the moment, so you keep leaning in, believing you're strengthening the relationship. But psychological traps rarely appear as obvious mistakes. They form through slow conditioning, like a path worn into the ground, not from one step, but from walking the same direction again and again. Or like background pressure that slowly changes your posture until you forget how you used to stand. The issue isn't kindness. It's the pattern of always absorbing the pressure without it ever returning the other way. What matters here isn't whether you care deeply. It's whether caring has gradually required you to silence your own instincts. When someone repeatedly prioritizes harmony over honesty, peace over boundaries, that quiet trade-off begins to reshape how they're treated. And from here, the dynamic becomes more defined. Because what follows isn't open exploitation, it's normalization. This is where many men don't suddenly lose respect, but slowly become the person everyone expects to bend. If this pattern feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with me. 3. Gradual boundary. Erosion. This is a process that occurs incredibly slowly, but with devastating results. Recall the early days of your relationship. You had clear boundaries, Wednesday nights for football with friends, weekends for personal hobbies, or specific principles regarding privacy. At that time, she respected those things because they created the attraction of a man who had his own life. But then, bit by bit, those boundaries were invaded. It starts with a minor complaint. Are you going out again? Or a small pout that makes you feel guilty. You tell yourself, just this once, it's fine to give in to her. But this is the trap of micro-compromises. When you give up small parts of your life in exchange for peace, you send a signal: my boundaries are negotiable. The male mistake, believing that more sacrifice equals more love. In the Femina Mind mindset, a man without boundaries is like a nation without borders. Anyone can walk in and set their own laws. 4. Rewarding disrespect with more effort. This is an agonizing paradox, and the moment the doormat trap truly reveals itself. Observe your reaction when she becomes cold, irrationally irritable, or speaks disrespectfully. Instead of maintaining distance and reestablishing a boundary, you react by caring more, buying gifts, doing more chores, or desperately trying any way to make her happy again. Psychologically, this inadvertently reinforces negative behavior. You are teaching her, every time you treat me poorly, I will work twice as hard to please you. This is a toxic loop that causes respect to vanish completely. You think effort will fix everything, but in reality, you are turning yourself into a cheap, emotional soothing tool. According to Femina Mind, the correct action is to pull back. When respect is gone, your effort is meaningless. You must maintain calm and observe her reaction when you are no longer the one chasing after her to comfort her. Silence and distance at this moment are worth more than 1,000 explanations. 5. The invisible fear of being replaced. You begin to act based on a scarcity mindset. You fear that if you aren't good enough or submissive enough, she will find someone better. This is the fatal weakness that makes you accept every irrational demand. Remember, attraction is never built through desperation. A man who is always terrified of being abandoned will never have the true respect of his woman. 6. Losing your independent identity. You gradually see friends less, neglect career goals, or abandon personal passions just to revolve around the axis of the relationship. You are no longer the original person she fell in love with. You've become a satellite with no gravity of its own. The mistake, believing the relationship must be the center of your life. In reality, a man is most attractive when he has a private world that a woman craves to be a part of. If these patterns feel familiar, especially the feeling that you are fighting to keep someone by losing yourself, hit subscribe. We aren't here to learn how to control others. We are here to learn how to never let others control our value. We are approaching the final pattern, the last threshold where your self-respect is put up for negotiation. We have traveled a journey from minor concessions to the gradual loss of personal identity. Now face the final threshold where this psychological trap truly completes its devastating mission, turning you into a stranger to the face you see in the mirror. 7. You start negotiating your own self-respect. This is the final breaking point for a man and the most dangerous stage. You no longer resist disrespectful words. You accept irrational demands and treatment that you would previously never have allowed anyone to inflict upon you. You delude yourself with phrases like, "It's okay as long as she stays," or "I'll just endure a bit to keep the home together." But look clearly at this difficult truth. Doormats are not created by women. They are created when a man decides to trade his self-respect for acceptance. When you negotiate with your dignity, you send a final message to your partner. I no longer respect myself, so you don't need to respect me either. In the Femina Mind mindset, we emphasize that a healthy relationship must be a connection between two complete and independent individuals. It cannot exist sustainably based on the unconditional sacrifice of one side and the exclusive enjoyment of the other. A mature man does not need to become cold or rude to maintain his value, but he must have clear boundaries and standards. Flip your perception right now. You do not keep a woman by becoming the most compliant version of yourself. You keep her appreciation by being a man with the character to say no when necessary. Attraction is inherently built on respect, not on submission. Femina Mind does not encourage you to play psychological games or attempt to control others. Our core philosophy is to help you recognize the dynamics that are eroding who you are. A true relationship must be a place where you can be yourself and be respected for your unique values, not a place where you must constantly trim yourself to fit a mold that someone else expects. And in the end, the point worth reflecting on is not whether someone has taken advantage of you, nor is it to label yourself with negative terms like weak or submissive. The deeper issue lies here. In the process of trying to keep the peace and trying to do everything right, are you still standing on your own side? Not through words, but through how you accept the things that make you shrink, bit by bit. Many fall into this psychological trap, not because they lack value, but because they are so afraid of losing the connection. They believe that if they give in a little more, explain a little more, or try a little harder, everything will stabilize again. But there is a paradox. The more you try to secure your position by shrinking yourself, the more you cause that position to be overlooked. When you realize this, stepping back is not an act of rebellion. Sometimes it is simply the first time you stop negotiating with your self-respect. Femina Mind does not exist to turn you into someone cold and rigid, nor to make you view every relationship as a power struggle. Femina Mind is an observational mindset, helping you recognize when kindness is turning into excessive self-sacrifice. It is a way to stay calm when emotions want to drive you to keep giving just to be accepted. And above all, it is the self-respect compass that reminds you that kindness should never cost you your place in your own life. Perhaps the question worth pausing on for a few seconds is not, how can I get others to respect me more? Instead, it is, do I respect myself enough to stop playing the role of the one who always has to yield? If you want, you can share your experience in the comments section, not to blame anyone, but simply to be honest with your own journey. And if Femina Mind helps you maintain that clarity and dignity, you can stay and follow the channel. Not to learn how to be tougher, but to ensure you never trade your self-respect just to be accepted.